Yes, everyone, welcome back to the 67 Hill channel on YouTube with me, Hamish. After all the positivity of a possible signing coming into the club on yesterday's video, I'm afraid we're taking a more negative look today. The news that broke earlier today that there will be no test events at Scottish Premiership games this weekend, that was confirmed by Aberdeen. We'll go into their plan in a little bit in this video and work out what the future could be for Celtic. But first, I'll put out my usual shout. If you've not yet managed to subscribe to the channel, we would massively appreciate you doing that. I sound like a broken record every single video, but if you just mind pausing the video, click subscribe, click the alarm bell as well so that you don't miss out on any future uploads. That would be massively appreciated by myself. So Aberdeen tweeted the news on Tuesday morning that they wouldn't be allowed to hold a test event this weekend. They had hosted one last weekend. They had 300 fans at their home game against Kilmarnock. Our game as well, away to Ross County, also had 300 fans in place, although that won't be happening at any Scottish Premiership game this weekend. Now, Aberdeen obviously a little bit disappointed, to say the least. In their statement, they claim that their test event last weekend went absolutely brilliantly and went really safely, all that kind of stuff. Got a wee problem with that with regards to the fact that the incubation period for COVID is at most 2 weeks, so surely they don't really know how successful it was a couple of days down the line. But anyway, they seem to reckon that it went well, and sadly from their point of view, and every other team in Scotland and every supporter, we're not going to have any test events this week or probably for the next few weeks. The Dons were hoping to have 700 fans at their game this weekend. That obviously isn't going to be happening. We're currently in the middle of September. 14th of September was the date originally given by Nicola Sturgeon, the Scottish First Minister, just a couple of months ago with regards to when we could get fans back into the game. Obviously, there was test events prior to that, like the games on Saturday and also a rugby game at Murrayfield 10 days ago. However, the date, the 14th of September, has now been pushed back 3 weeks to the 5th of October due to the rising number of cases in Scotland, and also the fact that there's several local lockdowns on, or certainly guidelines been placed in terms of restrictions up and down the country. So effectively, we're going to have no fans back at Scottish football games until October the 5th or the weekend after that at the very earliest. The slight caveat to that is that we could have fans back, not this weekend obviously, but maybe the following weekends prior to the start of October, if teams are granted allowance to host these test events. They'll have to get special dispensation from the Scottish Government if they want to do that, and it doesn't seem too likely at the moment, which is obviously really disappointing. And I hate to be the harbinger of doom, but when you see the rising cases around the country and the fact that we're getting close to going into the kind of winter season, certainly the colder months in the calendar, I see a bleak future for fans getting back to games this season. Well, it won't be this weekend, we know that much for sure. After that, our next home game is against Hibernian. I would say that it's pretty unlikely we'll get fans back there. As I just commented on, the only way we could have spectators in place for that would be if we got that special dispensation to hold a test event from the Scottish Government. The following home game to that is the big derby against Rangers, and while that falls after the 5th of October date that's been given, which is an indicative date for when fans could get back to games, I still find that pretty unlikely that we're going to get any sort of support into Celtic Park for that game. I would be pretty surprised if we have fans in place for the derby against Rangers, and even if we somehow manage to, it's going to be small amounts. It's going to be in the hundreds, and when you see all the various rules that have been placed on supporters, they can't sing, they can't shout, they can't stand. It's pretty bleak. You're almost pondering the question, is it even worth having fans if they can't do that and they're in such limited numbers? So yes, very bleak indeed, but I would be very surprised if we have any sort of support in place for the Rangers game, even though Neil Lennon reckons that it's a probability or certainly something that could happen. I think he's just toeing the party line. He's just saying what the board want him to do and what he wants to happen. Put it this way, if Neil Lennon was to say, no, I don't think we will get fans back in place, that would immediately set the tone and almost make it easy for the government or whoever to decide you're not going to get fans back in. So he's got to say what he did, but do I think we'll have fans in place for the Rangers game? Nope. In fact, I'll go a step further and I will state right now in this video that I'd be surprised if we get a crowd of over 10,000 at Celtic Park in 2020. Who knows, maybe if Scotland deals with the inevitable winter surge in cases, then perhaps at the start of 2020 or a couple of months in, we could start getting fans back in good numbers for the end of the season. But anyone expecting to see Celtic Park full at any point this season, your expectations are a little bit too high, I think. This real hope that we could get 60,000 fans back in Celtic Park for lifting the trophy at the end of the season. I would love to see it happen, but without a vaccine, I just don't see a way that can happen at the moment. Now, anyone who watches Neil Lennon's press conferences on a semi-regular basis and saw his one prior to the game against Ross County will have seen the comments he made. Pretty kind of scathing towards the fact that fans haven't been allowed back into Celtic Park yet. He cited an example of the Kansas City Chiefs, the NFL team, who had around 18 to 20,000 at their NFL game sometime last week. Now, National Clinical Director Jason Leach then responded to these comments when he was on BBC's Off the Ball show on Saturday. He effectively said that the mortality rate, aka the number of people dying in America, is akin to the number of actual cases we've got in this country. So Jason Leach says he wouldn't be advising the Scottish Government to follow the lead of United States at the moment, which is a very fair comment as far as I'm aware. So if we look around other countries a bit closer to home in Europe, France, one that people are commenting on. I've watched a couple of league and games over the last week or so. They've had fans in. They've had around, I think, 5,000 is the kind of golden number they're going for. Doesn't seem to be a lot of social distancing going on in some of the games as well. I don't know how they're enforcing that, but it doesn't reflect too well, I think, on France and the French government at the moment. They've actually got higher numbers of cases now than they did in their peak in March, and they're having 5,000 fans into games. So that doesn't bode too well. Even closer to home, England, they've not got fans back at games yet. They had hoped for an early date in October to start getting some amount of supporters into games. However, the fact that they've got the law similar to in Scotland, where up to or no more than 6 people are allowed to meet together at the same time. While that's in place, football fans won't be back at games either. So it looks just as bleak in England as it does for us. A lot of people commenting on the fact that Germany seems to be getting back to normal. This, I think, comes from a video that went viral from German side Hansa Rostock, who were playing in a German Cup game against VfB Stuttgart on Saturday. Now, they had pretty much a full stadium, 20,000 fans in place. Didn't seem to be a hell of a lot of social distancing going on there. I couldn't believe it when I saw it. I thought it was an old clip that people had managed to trick people into on Twitter. I looked a bit into it. Apparently had an alcohol ban in place to obviously stop people mixing as much, and also obviously when you're drinking alcohol, when you've had a few drinks, you're less likely to follow social distancing guidelines. So they did a bit of work there, but the fact they had 20,000 people in such a small stadium didn't look too good there either. It's a really tough one because so many people are looking at these other countries. Neil Lennon did it looking at the NFL. We're doing it looking at this game in Germany, France, etc. The truth is that the Scottish Government are taking it slow. They're putting public health before wanting to get people back to football games, among other things. And to be honest, as infuriating as it is watching games with no fans and having the prospect of having a whole season without fans, I don't think you can have a go at the Scottish Government for doing that and putting public health first. Who knows what will happen in these other countries, the likes of France, Germany. They may have escalating cases down to this, and me personally, as I say, as frustrating as I find it, I think it's the right thing to do at the moment, is not to take any chances. But I understand that there'll be many people watching this, Celtic fans who have paid for season tickets this season, who regularly went to away games, and they probably realise now that's not going to be on offer, certainly for most of this season. My sympathies are with you. I think you deserve massive credit for ploughing money into the club with no guarantees this season. But it is just a horrible situation, and I think it's going to be pretty bleak this season, if I'm honest. Let's just hope that we can show our quality on the pitch and at least give the Celtic fans something to sing about, even if they're not doing it directly at matches.